Before this season began, there was an anime that started airing at the end of summer 2018, and that anime was Double Decker Doug and Kirill. Being tied to Tiger and Bunny, it already had a loyal following, and I had many people commenting long before I put up my poll in the community tab, which this obviously won, of people telling me to cover this anime. So here I am, covering the cyberpunk-ish buddy cop comedy Double Decker Doug and Kirill. So the story is basically this. The city Lis Valida has a lot of drug problems, but not in the traditional sense. There are two types of drugs. Your standard drugs we all know and, well, don't love, I guess. Drugs are bad, okay? And Anthem. Anthem is a powerful synthetic and addictive drug and can, if in high dosages, turn the user into literal monsters with superhuman strengths. Enter 7-0 SCIU, who are a crimes unit specially made to counter the usage and proliferation of Anthem in Lis Valida. But 7-0 uses a unique pairing system called the Double Decker system, in which they pair together two people. One of those teams, among others, is Doug Billingham, a veteran of the job, and Kirill Vrubel, a nobody beat cop turned 7-0 member who wants to do something more than just paperwork. Double Decker, for the first 5 episodes I've seen from beginning to end, are incredibly funny and enjoyable. The show likes to meld many different ideas together to create these unique episodes and concepts. An example of this melding together is cyberpunk and buddy cop. I mean, the anime has Double Decker in the title, which is the anime's buddy system for our characters, so you know it's a big portion of the show. And the way it establishes that buddy system throughout its first 4 episodes was done in a very good way. While the show uses a Monster of the Week formula for its early episodes to establish it, it does so that it can also as well establish its characters, their relationships, and the concepts of the show and its world. In other words, this is a good implementation of Monster of the Week, which I really didn't mind at all. But as the show goes on and establishes the characters more and more, you really start to appreciate these characters. One of the funniest moments for me in the show is when they establish Doug and Kirill as an asshole and a dumbass, respectively.
That's right! He's an idiot!
They established that early on in such an obvious way because later on when it's revealed that, for example, Yuri is a robot and that it's public record she is, you get moments like these.
I think she might actually be a robot.
It's public knowledge that Yuri is indeed actually a robot!
I won't tell a soul.
That's right! Doug is indeed actually an asshole!
And this is the kind of stuff Doug and Kirill excels at. It's a Western style of comedy in a Japanese anime. Much like Hinamatsuri, it's a comedy that stands out amongst the other boring fan service comedy about stealing panties or just tired, jokey tropes. The jokes in this anime are funny, have good build-up, and actually go through with the jokes rather than half-heartedly repeat the same ones over and over. Some of the jokes are very inventive and creative too, as they use their surroundings and their genre to their advantage many times.
What? That bastard's the reason we lost Derek.
You know full well we can't do anything without proof of Anthem usage, even for a lost colleague.
You know what's wrong with you? Your mother.
Hey now, that was a little harsh.
There are issues though, and that's oddly enough with the dub, which I will praise later on, and some of the jokes, and a really dumb usage of a trope. So let's talk about Kay, who is played by Natalie Hoover, and let me say, there are scenes where she is just fine, but some scenes it feels like she is forcing those lines out and not really trying. And in a dub where everyone else is giving an S-rank performance, it really shows.
Are you okay?
Yeah. What the hell happened here?
The foreman. He went into Anthem Overdrive. He's lost control.
Activating eye system.
Another issue is that some of these jokes are downright pointless and a little clunky. An example is when Doug is stuck in a vent and so he enlists the help of Kirill to distract the enemy. So what he does is jump down naked and says he's come from the future. It's an obvious Terminator reference, one that Hinamatsuri did way better because this joke goes absolutely nowhere. He says he comes from the future, then Doug comes out of nowhere and saves the day. It was rather pointless in the grand scheme of things. And finally, in episode 5, one of the main villains of the series leaves the heroes to live when he could just kill them. And he doesn't because reasons. And it's issues like these that keep the show from sometimes reaching its full potential. And as the series continues to air, I hope these issues just become a product of them trying to establish things in the first 4 episodes in a Monster of the Week format. And to add on to some of the issues, they implement CGI in the series, and surprisingly, a great majority of the CGI is actually pretty solid to good. But at times, its implementation doesn't make sense, and every place that it doesn't make sense is an example of how it uses bad CGI. An example of this is animating Doug as CGI with Kay visibly in frame as hand-drawn animation rather than CGI. It's confusing because on top of that, it's only for a split second they use him in CGI, and as the very next cut, he is back to hand-drawn. It's just confusing as to why it was used this way because this anime otherwise takes full advantage of CGI to create something unique looking rather than to save on cash. In many ways, Doug and Kirill can be compared in some scenes to that of Land of the Lustrous, which is by far the best CGI-only anime out there. And I say this because they both use CGI to create unique shots and action. CGI, for the most part, isn't a crutch in this series, but a part of the experience of it. Double Decker is this love letter to old 80s buddy cop movies and TV shows like Lethal Weapon and 21 Jump Street. It's obvious because of the almost comic book-like aesthetic to the show and the on-the-nose buddy cop-like writing. I mean, just looking at how they model Lis Valita, you can tell this isn't after some Japanese city, and of course the usage of American dollars. This is modeled after something like the concrete jungles of LA and New York because of its grimy and colorful aesthetic. And this is where its comic book inspirations come in, because sometimes to add to these backgrounds, you get these great looking scenes where they forego animation and use comic book panels. But it also makes use of the cyberpunk look as well, as the DeLorean Doug drives can transform into this super fast vehicle, or when Doug or one of the 7-0 uses their eye to analyze the monster and decide the kind of bullet they'll use. It just all adds together to create this awesome looking anime full of color, mystique, and a great 80s buddy cop vibe, while still implementing a rather surprisingly well done cyberpunk theme. And how about that English dub? We've had plenty of killer English dubs this year from the wizards over at Funimation, and this one may be one of their top dubs this year. Just name off all of the main cast and then some extras. We have Ian Sinclair, who plays Doug Billingham, Micah Salusad, who plays Kirill Vrubel, Jamie Marchi as Deanna, Natalie Hoover as Kay, and Brittany Lotta as the literal robot Yuri. And I couldn't actually confirm this officially, but I am fairly certain I heard the voice of Jet Black himself, Bew Billingsley, in episode 2. And it's dubs like this which pay for the Funimation subscription itself, because a good dub can easily make an anime like this one much better than it is in sub. This is one of those legendary dubs that don't come around often, but this anime accommodates the dub rather well, as just like Hinamatsuri, the comedy isn't Japanese-centric, but more Western in style. And because of that, this anime easily connects with me, and there have been multiple times where I have straight up belly laughed because the delivery of these lines and jokes were downright hilarious. Double Decker, Doug and Kirill knows what it is and doesn't hide that at all. Instead of trying to act like something it's not, it takes advantage of what it is and leans into it even more. In many ways, it's what Release the Spy should have been, an over-the-top spy comedy. But Doug and Kirill, while having many issues, is one of the finest comedy experiences this year, up there with the Anime of the Year contender Hinamatsuri. So, if you like what I said here, then give this show a shot, as it's one of the very best of the fall 2018 season, and you don't want to miss out on something like this. Thanks everybody for watching the video. If you haven't already, like this video, subscribe and ring the bell. Check the description, because every Saturday, I'm doing the fall 2018 podcast, King of Anime podcast, live on Twitch, usually at 8 p.m. EST. So, everything you need to know is down in the description. Go check that out, and thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate all of the support you give me, and how about that Double Decker Doug and Kirill? See ya, bye-bye.